Hello, I am an angry bloody trans man. Since this is my first video, it seems pretty fitting that I should talk about being trans. So basically, going by the information I can find on the internet, it seems like science just plain hasn't figured out yet whether transsexualism is nature or nurture. I've been told loads of times that you can actually see the differences between a male brain and a female brain on an MRI scan, and I've also been told that there's no differences to capture. Point of interest, the people who've told me that you can capture the difference on an MRI scan tend to be more qualified than the people who say you can't. So I don't know if that means anything or not, but there it is. This is a subject that causes a heck of a lot of grief in the trans community. People get really angry about it, mainly because it's usually cisgender people who bring it up, who are trying to argue that being trans is a mental illness. So trans people get really defensive about it, and I think everybody should just chill out and logic this one out for a moment. So first, let's say there is such a thing as a male brain and a female brain, and they're completely different. You can pick it up on an MRI scan. This would mean that gender is definitely nature, not nurture. It would mean that your gender is there before you're born and nothing will change it. I was born with a random blob of flesh under my armpit, a birth defect. It was removed when I was a baby. Birth defects happen. Think of all the birth defects that you've come across. Sometimes twins are born stuck together. You will have come across conjoined twins at some point in your life. Some people are born with their brains only half formed. Some people are born with both sets of genitalia. If there is an actual difference between a male brain and a female brain, it's not a very big stretch of the imagination at all that somebody could be born with female genitalia and a male brain, or male genitalia and a female brain. And this would make it a physical deformity like my blob of flesh, and definitely not a mental illness. Now let's say there is no difference between a male brain and a female brain. There's just brains. Everybody's brain is different. You've just got a brain, presumably. This is what the SJWs tend to say. They tend to argue that gender is just a social construct. It's not something that really exists. This would make it true. It would mean that something or a series of somethings happened to me in my life to make me trans, to make me male, like I'd be female if my life had been different. And the upshot of this is that it would mean that something or a series of somethings also happens in your life to make you the gender that you are. If my gender is nurture, so is yours. If I chose, then you chose. And if my gender's a mental illness, then so is yours. If we say that gender is entirely determined by what's between your legs, well, an operation can change that. Also, as I said before, some people are born with both, some people are born with neither. If you're going to use the ability to produce offspring as an argument against trans people, well, lots of cisgender people can't produce offspring either. So what gender do you consider them to be? I've heard people say that there's no evidence that there's more than two genders. Well, really, the evidence that there's more than two is much the same as the evidence that there are genders. It's this thing of science isn't sure if it's nature or nurture. So the same arguments I've used really apply to this. If your gender's in your brain, well, brains differ. Brains vary so much that if we can't figure out whether there's male ones and female ones, we can't figure out if there's male, female and something in between. If it's what's between your legs, well, as I've said, I think a couple of times, people are born with both. If you think gender is, if you think there's massive behavioural differences in gender and that's what determines gender, well, there's massive behavioural differences between specific people. If you're going to say there's a set of behaviour that's purely female and a set of behaviour that's purely male, what do you call the people who have both behaviours? Like, you could say liking cars is a male behaviour, and you have women who like cars, so are you going to say that those women are part male? I think that there has to be something in between. There has to be some sort of bigender, or whatever you want to call it. I don't believe that we've just got male, female. I think non-binary is the word that's used a lot. Non-binary people. So basically, I guess my point is, whichever way you choose to look at it, it just doesn't make sense to have a problem with transsexualism. It doesn't make any sense at all to claim it's a mental illness. So if you agree or disagree, or have anything to add, comment and we can debate it perhaps. Anyway, see ya.